Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I hope that you are all well. I want to thank you for joining us for today's conversation. Our International Executive of the Year Award is always a fantastic culmination of our season. We have many sponsors of this illustrious program, and I'd like to take a moment to thank each of them. First, our presenting sponsor, KPMG, our platinum sponsor, Accenture, our gold sponsors, the Anne and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago, Edelman, NiSource, and Sidley. Our silver sponsors, American Airlines, Hirewell, Manilow Street, Northern Trust, PNC Bank, PwC, and US Bank, and our technical sponsor, Shure. A quick note that if you hover over your mouse on the Zoom taskbar at the bottom of the screen, you'll be able to add questions to our Q&A box. We will do our best to answer as many of your questions as we can. If you have any technical issues, you can just email programs@executivesclub.org, and my team will put that in the chat so you have it readily available. We have several members of our team on the lookout for any issues that you may have. Before we present our award, I would like to introduce Executives Club of Chicago Board Director Linda Imonti, Chicago Office Managing Principal at KPMG, who is our presenting sponsor for today. Linda.
Thanks, Margaret. Good morning. I am Linda Imonti, the Office Managing Principal here at KPMG. I'm really delighted to be here today to celebrate this year's International Executive of the Year recipient, Marillyn Hewson, Executive Chairman of Lockheed Martin. We are so proud to be a supporter of the Executives Club of Chicago through our sponsorship of the Global Series, focused on bringing world-renowned leaders, their principles, their missions, to those within our Chicago business community. I'm really honored to represent KPMG as I present the sponsor of today, as the presenting sponsor of today's program. This program is always a highlight at the finale to a really great year of fine programming, and it's a chance to celebrate renowned leadership. The Executives Club mission is to provide business leaders opportunities to develop and nurture meaningful relationships while gaining world-class knowledge that'll expand their perspectives and sharpen all of our capabilities. To get the opportunity to hear from Ms. Hewson is more than just a fitting embodiment of this mission. It really highlights the marks of leadership the club strives to promote. KPMG and Lockheed Martin have a great long-standing relationship, one that has been further strengthened over the years by working together for nearly 2 decades. It's a testament to how well our teams have partnered to solve really complex business challenges in an ever-changing marketplace. But in addition to our core work we've done, we've also had a number of discussions around the areas of disruption and how we can turn those disruptors into opportunities for competitive advantages and growth. Thank you, Marilyn, for the continued opportunity to serve Lockheed Martin. And I look forward to our relationship growing stronger in the coming years. But most importantly, Marilyn, congratulations on your receipt of this really much deserved recognition. Margaret, back to you.
Thank you, Linda. Now it is my great honor, on behalf of the Executives Club of Chicago, to present Marillyn Hewson, Executive Chairman of Lockheed Martin, with the 2020 International Executive of the Year Award. 26 years ago, we presented the inaugural International Executive Year Award to Bill Gates, founder and CEO of Microsoft. And every year since, our board of directors has selected a global CEO whose exemplary leadership has created significant contributions, not only to their own organizations, but also to the global business community. I'd like to share a few words about this year's award winner. Marillyn Hewson joined Lockheed Martin more than 35 years ago as an industrial engineer, ultimately rising to the position of chairman, president, and CEO. Marilyn just transitioned to the role of executive chairman on June 15th. Prior to becoming CEO, Marilyn held several operational leadership positions within Lockheed Martin and served in key corporate executive roles. Under Marilyn's leadership, Lockheed Martin strengthened its position as the world's premier aerospace and defense company as its market capitalization more than tripled. As CEO, Marilyn's leadership exemplified Lockheed Martin's core values: to do what's right, respect others, and to perform with excellence. She worked to ensure these values shaped Lockheed Martin's corporate culture by driving its business approach, encouraging outreach in the community, and inspiring sustainability and environmental stewardship. As CEO, Marilyn served as chair of Lockheed Martin's Executive Inclusion Council, ensuring that diverse voices were heard at the highest levels of the corporation. In 2019, Time magazine identified Marilyn as one of the 100 most influential people in the world. Fortune magazine ranked her #1 on its list of 50 most powerful women in business for the second year in a row. In 2018, she was named the CEO of the Year by Chief Executive Magazine, a top 10 business person of the year by Fortune magazine, and one of the world's 100 most powerful women by Forbes. So please all join me this year in a virtual round of applause for International Executive of the Year, Marillyn Hewson. Okay, congratulations, Marilyn.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you so much. It's just such a tremendous honor, and I really very much appreciate it. As I told Margaret, I have the award right here behind me, so I want to at least hold it up and show everyone that she got it to my home so that we could have it for this virtual celebration. I'm sorry we all can't be together for it, but it's really a tremendous honor. And I know there have been, as you said, so many distinguished recipients of this award. So, you know, to me, it's just, I'm deeply grateful. But I must say that it really is a tribute to the 110,000 men and women of Lockheed Martin, because our success as a company, both in the US and around the world, is truly a tribute to them. It's their energy, it's their integrity, it's just their teamwork and all that they do, their ingenuity, that has really made us such a strong company. And all of the accolades that you point to really are a tribute to all of them, because I wouldn't be on any of those lists if it weren't for the men and women of Lockheed Martin. But I do want to say how much I appreciate the Executives Club of Chicago, because what you do is so important. You're a prestigious organization that really brings together leaders focused on strategic relationships, things to make the world better. And I know you have tremendous visionary leaders and speakers, statesmen and stateswomen who come and speak to your group, and CEOs from all walks of life that enrich all of you in learning more about their businesses. So kudos to you as an organization, and I'm just truly honored to be a part of this today. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for being with us. And I only know a few members of your team, but I could tell your leadership because they have been just fabulous to work with, and you all have been so gracious in rolling with the punches in what has been an extraordinary time. So thank you so much for your flexibility. So let's get into it, because there's a lot we want to talk about. So most people know Lockheed Martin for its fighter jets, particularly the F-35. But for those who don't know the full scope of what you do, can you tell us a little bit more about the company, your presence across the country, and even around the world?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm very proud of our company and what we do. We do some of the most interesting and important work in the world. We have 110,000 employees, and they are mostly in the US. We have about close to 8,000 of them that are outside of the US in countries, about 100 countries around the world, and supporting our business there. Predominance of the work that we do is for governments, because what we work on is global security and on advanced discovery. And we're structured with most of our work is in our supply chain. So we have about 16,000 suppliers, about 1,000 of them outside of the US, but most of them in the US, who do a lot of the work that supports the programs and technologies and capabilities that we produce. We're organized into 4 business areas, and I'll just touch on each of those because I think it gives you much more insight into the breadth of our portfolio, which is very broad and very deep. Space, our space business, we've been on virtually every NASA mission to Mars. We build spacecraft that, you know, we're working on Orion, which is the next astronaut spacecraft that'll go to the moon and then to Mars. We build spacecraft that for years and in all elements of the solar system, and landers. We also do national security space, so things that help to notify of any missile launches, or gives us weather forecasting. GPS are the satellites we build as well. So you think about what impacts your life every day. We do a lot of work in that regard. The second area is our missiles and fire control, where we do a lot of tactical missiles and air and missile defense, protecting citizens and our men and women in uniform around the world. And that piece of our business is one that is and growing and important because of the growth of a lot of the global security challenges that the world sees every day, and just making sure that we can protect our men and women in uniform and protect our citizens, both in the US and our allies. The third element is rotary and mission systems. We bought Sikorsky a few years ago, and so we have all the Sikorsky helicopter programs, everything from the presidential helicopter to the Black Hawk, which is the medium lift helicopter for the Army. We're building the heavy lift one for the Marine Corps, and these helicopters are used around the world. Combat rescue helicopter for the Air Force, so a long history in helicopters, and we're working on the next future vertical lift helicopter for in the competition for that, and that's an exciting area for us. But in addition to that area of our business also does undersea and maritime type systems, as well as training and logistics and cybersecurity, so very broad there. And then the last one you mentioned is our fighter jet operation, where we do aeronautics, where we do the F-35, the most advanced fighter jet in the world, as well as the F-16, the F-22. We also do air mobility with the C-130, and then a lot of advanced work that's going on in our Skunk Works operation in California. So that's just touching on the highlights of our company. I've often called it a national asset because, in my view, the important work that we do in protecting our citizens and in advanced scientific discovery makes it one of the most interesting and exciting companies to be a part of, and really a very important company for our nation and for the world.
Yeah, so fascinating. So I'm curious, do you fly?
Do I personally fly? I'm not a pilot. I fly a lot in my job, obviously, because I'm traveling around the world, but no, I don't. I'm not a pilot.
You don't get to fly any of your super cool stuff. So you have worked full-time since you were 16. A question that we like to ask a lot of our CEOs is, what was your first job?
Well, my first job was they called it the manager of a bunch of teenagers, but at age 16 in the Dairy Queen, I was the night manager, which meant I supervised the other teenagers that were, making ice cream cones and burgers, and I put the money away at night. And for $1.25 an hour, that was my promotion after coming into that business. That's what I did. You can judge by what my pay was, how many years ago that was. I've been, when I think about where I am that's many, many years ago that I started out, but I worked actually full-time in high school at that Dairy Queen, and that was my first job.
We have a Dairy Queen a block away. My kids are thrilled. But the reason we ask that question is oftentimes there's an important lesson that leaders learned very early on that they've carried with them. And so I'm wondering if there is something in your first job at Dairy Queen that was important that you learned that you still take with you as a leader.
Well, yes. One of the things I learned is how important doing your best every day is. I mean, that's why when I was just there for a couple of months, the owner promoted me from the $1 an hour to $1.25 an hour in order to be the night manager for him and to supervise the others, because he saw in me somebody that was diligent and that worked hard and that had a strong value base. But I think, over the years, what I've learned is one of the most important traits of any leader is listening, and really listening to the customer. And so I often am asked that question because people wonder, well, when you look at all the elements of leadership skills that you accumulate over the course of experience that you get, what is the one? And I would say listening is one of the most important ones, and not just to the customer, because that allows you to align with their priorities and anticipate their needs and help them in what they're trying to accomplish. But it's also listening to your employees, to your colleagues, to the communities where you work and live. If you listen, that's where you can come to understanding how you can bring the best value to each of them, and also how you can align better with them on common objectives. I know that's important for your club. That's something I know that is very important for you as leaders in the Executives Club as well. But to me, that's one of the traits. In fact, when I took over as CEO, and I've done this on every job, but when I took over as CEO, I made that one of my primary focus areas, was to go out immediately and listen to customers and understand how we were doing as a company, areas we could improve. And out of that, my very first meeting I had with leaders, the top leaders of the corporation, the top 300 leaders, was to give them feedback on what I heard. And what I heard in that was we needed to listen better than we were listening. And so I put it in place, a focus on customer relationships, on listening and communicating and aligning with our customers. You know, often as leaders, when you have a product you want to sell, or you've got a concept you want to promote, often people go in and it's just all about what they want to convey to the customer without listening to the customer first. And sometimes it's not what they want to hear, or they feel as though you're not listening to them. And so that's been an area that I have put a lot of focus on. We put in place a customer relationship summit. We put action items in place. And I'm proud to say with about 4 months into the job, I had a call from a very senior customer who called to tell me that he was noticing a difference in the way that we were listening and responding to the needs of the customer. And then over the course of my time in my role, that unsolicited feedback, I think more so than anything, is how you know if you're improving and getting better. And that's been an area that even today, whenever I talk to employees, it's always first and foremost of what I highlight. Listen to the customers, understand their needs, try to anticipate their needs to bring them the best value so that you can align with what their priorities are.
I mean, that's just a lesson for life, right? If we could all be better listeners in all aspects of our life, you know, friendships, family, all of it. I mean, it's something that I think we all struggle with. So many of our CEOs also point to something early on, either a formative experience or sometimes a person who really had an indelible impact on their life. There was something that became this moment that set them on a course to the success that they ultimately had. And I'm wondering if there was something like that for you. Was there an experience or a person or anything that, like, that was the moment where it kind of set you in this new direction?
Well, I have to, I mean, I know a lot of people reflect back on their parents. I have to reflect on my mother. My father died when I was only 9 years old. I had 4 siblings, and she was, you know, a widow at a young age in her early 40s. And she kept her family together. She, you know, brought to us a focus on maintaining what it was a very value-based home life that we had, but one to just say, if you work hard and you stay focused on your values, you can do anything. And in that, it just taught me I had to grow up very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had 2 younger sisters to look after, and I had to help my mother with a lot of things. But I think in that process, she demonstrated for me a leadership of you know, just a sense of understanding that she needed to have stability in her family despite the adversity that she faced, and then in that to continue forward as a family and to help us to achieve. Later in my career, you know, I've often applied a lot of lessons I learned from her in that moment, in that timeline that I was involved with at home with a you know, a single parent. But later in life, you know, I've had different experiences. I mean, I've had 20 different leadership jobs within Lockheed Martin. Sometimes it was an organization that needed to grow, and other times it was one that, you know, that was new. One opportunity I had where I think was one of the most growing experiences for me was to take over a business that was riding pretty well, riding high, and all of a sudden their flagship program was canceled. And I was faced with having to tell 25% of the workforce that their jobs were going away, and to work with a leadership team that had never faced anything like that before. So drawing on the experiences with my mother who had faced adversity, being able to keep people focused on the values of the organization, focused on what our mission was and how we could deal with what we could control, the stability, the compassion, the communication all around that, I think was, again, drawing back from early days to a situation that I faced in the business. And so that's just a couple of examples for you, Margaret, that I think just, you know, bookend a couple of things in my life that I think have been really transformational for me as a leader.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. That's one of the things that we love about these interviews is getting to know people as people, right? Because we can read all about your career success. You know, any Google search will produce hundreds of thousands of things on you, but it's nice to get to know people a little bit. So thank you for sharing. So now we'll get into some of the career success. You became CEO of Lockheed Martin in 2013. Since then, the market cap has more than tripled. So what are some of the moves that you made that helped achieve such significant growth?
Well, first, I have to reflect back on really, it's not a single, any one of us as leaders know. I mean, leadership matters clearly, but it's really a team sport in our company. And, you know, when I took over, we were facing a challenging environment with our government customer because we were in what was called sequestration. Some of you may not even remember that name, but certainly those of us in the defense industry do. This was a time where our congressional leaders put in place a budget cap that meant that there was going to be some real challenges in our business for growth. And just focusing the team again on listening and customer relationships and then growing our international business was what allowed us to continue to grow through a period which was our major customer would have been flat or declining business opportunity for us, and to just win more business in that environment. And I think by setting on the course as a company on how we focused on the customer and how we could grow our international business, we were able through that period of time to continue to grow as a company and continue to excel. Again, one of the other areas that was important for us was not only how we could supply to our international customers. We grew from 17% of our sales to about 30% of our sales over a few years by having that kind of focus. But in addition to that, we knew that we had to focus on innovation. Innovation is the lifeblood of a company like ours. And it's really important that we're constantly spending the research and development dollars on the areas that we think align best with what our customers are going to need in the future. So we took a different tact on how we focused on innovation, and we made some big bets that as we look out today are actually paying off. We doubled down in some areas like hypersonics, which is an important area, and directed energy. And those are now, we're leading those areas now in our business because we made those critical investments early on. So I would just say it's about operational excellence and how we perform every day, but making sure we're innovating and making sure that we're looking for market opportunities as we grow. And it's just been a phenomenal opportunity to work with a top-notch team of people because their collaboration is incredible. They work together in a way that is, I'm so proud of the strength of what they bring to the job every day. And through that, we've been through ups and downs in the business. And now we're actually even going through this most recent period with the health crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic. We have been able to manage through that quite well. And we're going to see growth this year. And right now we're outlooking about a 6% growth for our company, even amid all of the challenges that COVID-19 has brought on.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, something that doesn't always make the headlines, which I know you also have had a profound impact on, is your company culture. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and just anything that you did a little bit differently when you entered that role?
Yes, well, our company culture is built on 3 core values: do what's right, respect others, and perform with excellence. In the do what's right arena, I mean, that's what attracts people to our company. And it's the ethical foundation of our company that, every decision we make is based on that ethical foundation of do what's right. And I think a lot of times about a quarter of our workforce are former military and government employees that come because they want to continue the mission of supporting men and women in uniform. And many of them tell me why they selected Lockheed Martin was that ethical foundation is so important to them. They see our company as having that strong ethical foundation. And then, in respecting others, that means not just as employees, but our customers and the way we listen and align with their priorities, how we deal with our suppliers, how we deal in the communities where we work and live, and having that focus, that core value of respecting others. It was mentioned our diversity and inclusion focus in creating an environment where people can excel and can bring their full selves to work every day and be a part of a company that is thriving. We see that as a business imperative where every individual is respected for who they are, and then we work to make sure that everybody is in an inclusive environment. And then finally, performing with excellence. As I often tell our employees, that's the best business development tool we have, is if we perform on the work that we have and we bring to our customers the best on the contracts and the opportunities we have. That's what's going to have them come back and we can be their preferred provider for the future. And so those core values are set within our company, and we create within that a culture of inclusion and a culture of innovation. And that's what brings people to our company. They see what we do every day. The purpose of what we do is, I know it attracts a lot of employees to companies to say, well, what do you do? Where can I make a difference? And you can absolutely make a difference at Lockheed Martin because of the just incredibly important work that we do for the United States and for our friends and allies around the world.
There's a question that popped up in the Q&A that seems appropriate to ask now. It's from Fred Siegman. Hi, Fred. Asking about supplier diversity programs. Can you share a little bit about what you're doing on that end? Because I know sometimes it's been a unique set of challenges for the high-tech companies and thinking about how they're ensuring this. So anything you have to share there?
Well, yes. Well, as a government contractor, because I'll just highlight for you that 98% of our business is governments, U.S. government and governments around the world. And from a U.S. government standpoint, and as a defense contractor, we really set about a comprehensive small business plan every year, and we measure ourselves to goals that we commit to. And I'm proud to say for the last several years, we've exceeded those goals on women-owned, small business, small minority business, all of the businesses that we support, veteran-owned, et cetera. So the supplier diversity piece is ingrained in our company. It's a very important element of our company. We also, it's not just because we have these goals, but we recognize how important small businesses are to innovation in our country and in our company. I mean, that's where we get the creativity and the innovation that we bring into our products every day. And then we also set up an Lockheed Martin Ventures Fund where we actually take equity positions in small businesses that are doing, especially startup businesses that are looking for funding to help them with what they're doing in technologies and capabilities that we see are aligned with some of the areas we're in. So another way that we not only have suppliers on the products that we have, but also that we take positions of an investment in as ventures in a lot of small businesses as well.
So let's talk a little bit about gender diversity, because you are a CEO who also happens to be a woman. The aerospace defense industry, traditionally male dominated. I'm just curious, how often has it been that you were the only woman in the room, in the leadership team?
Well, certainly when I started 37 years ago, I was often the only woman at the table. I mean, early on, within 18 months, I started as an industrial engineer, but within 18 months, I was a supervisor and then a manager and on my path in management. And there just weren't many women in leadership back then. If you think about it, we are a company that has a lot of science and engineering. We have 50,000 scientists and engineers, and it's a technology company. And so the pipeline of women at the time coming out of engineering schools was not very robust. Today is very much more so. And we've seen great progress in our company. But at that time, being the only woman, whether on a team or in a management team or whatever, what I found was just like on any team you join, I mean, so long as you come into that, establish your credibility, that you're contributing, that you're a valued member of the team, before long, your gender or your difference doesn't really matter because you're part of a team. And I experienced that early in my career, and I experienced that today. And I often mentor people around that to not come in with feeling like you're different, but really, how can you contribute to the team immediately and establish your credibility and be a part of that? When we look at Lockheed Martin, even our primary customer being the military, men and women, there weren't a lot of women in the military leadership as well. And today it's very different. And in our company, it is 22% of our leaders are women in our company today. And about a quarter of our workforce are women. Now, both of those are areas we're continuing to improve on. We want to continue, but within our industry, that's, we're doing well, but we want to continue to improve that. In fact, a lot of our philanthropy dollars goes towards STEM, and they're focused on STEM for people of color and for women, because we think that we need to continue to drive that pipeline of students coming out of STEM careers, STEM education to go into STEM careers like they can do at Lockheed Martin.
So there is a lot of advice that's given to people of color and women entering STEM careers. I'm wondering what advice you have for the people who manage them and lead them.
Well, what I ask them to do is to make sure that they support any employee coming in, but certainly women and people of color, if they are not, if there are fewer of them in a work group, to make sure that they feel supported, that their voice is heard, that they feel included. And we have a lot of business resource groups, or some people will call them employee resource groups, ERGs, BRGs, where we create environments where people can find others that they connect with. So we have a women's group of over 300 women that come together in a leadership forum once a year, and so that they can see they're not the only woman at the table. They're not, among a few, but we have a lot of women in our company, and they can work on their personal and professional development in that, and how they can contribute to the company. And then for leaders, what's important there is to make sure we do training on unconscious bias. Every leader in our company annually has to take unconscious bias training. I lead, and now the new CEO leads, an executive inclusion council with representatives from all of our business areas and our functions, where we look at are we creating an inclusive environment. I put that in place early on as a CEO, and we've kept that in place going forward, so that we're constantly looking at how we make sure that we have an inclusive environment. We do training for our leaders to make sure that their team environment is inclusive, and that the way that they work with their teams, make sure that they respect all voices at the table, and encourage people to bring their best ideas. And then honestly, I just think what I ask of each of our leaders and all of our employees is help us to attract others into our company, where they can see that we are a preferred employer, and we welcome everyone in the labor force, and we want to be a place where women and people of color find that they can achieve their personal and professional success at Lockheed Martin.
Thank you for giving those specifics. It's really helpful to people who are listening. You're also doing such a great job of proactively answering the questions coming through the chat, even though you can't see them. So you're a real pro. We're able to get through some of these. So something else that makes you so remarkable, you're in this unique position. You have successfully worked with presidents of both parties, serving on national commissions, advisory groups, and you are a respected voice on security around the world. And it's really unique, to be able to do that. You talked about listening, but what else? What would be a hallmark of, would you say, your leadership style that has made you so successful? Because that's very difficult to navigate as well as you have.
Well, I think it starts with, and as you said, I have had a tremendous opportunity as the leader of Lockheed Martin to be on some very important forums, I would say, more than anything else. So, for example, I was appointed on President Obama's Export Council, which is an important area where we were working on how do we increase exports from the U.S. and how we could improve our global competitiveness. And that was quite an honor to be selected on that, where I could represent the aerospace and defense industry and work with other leaders and people out of academia and government in order for us as a country to be stronger in that area. And I think what's important there is to build relationships and to bring to the table your perspective as a business leader for the business that you represent. I mean, we do business all over the world. I personally travel all over the world and work with world leaders and listen to what their challenges are. We recognized in a company where we're working on national security and we're working on advanced discovery, that what we do really helps governments to have economic stability. And so if you keep in mind that economic stability that national security can bring allows the ability to invest, to trade, to bring jobs to various areas, that connects in the United States, it connects to countries around the world where we do business. So having that voice and bringing that perspective is what is welcomed. I was also on the Vice President Pence has a National Space Council, and I was appointed to the User Advisory Group. That again is bringing perspective from a company that does a lot of space work and both national security space as well as exploration, and being able to bring the perspective that you always want. You know, when you create a comprehensive team like that, you're looking for the voice and the knowledge of a business leader alongside government, alongside academia, others, because it's that combination that gets to the best solution. And then most recently, I've been serving on the American Workforce Policy Advisory Board, where we're looking at the gap for jobs to the 21st century jobs that are out there, where we have, we need more people coming into STEM. We need more people getting reskilled and retrained for the way that with digitization and all the changes that are happening in our economy, that we can get people connected on that. And they, it doesn't just have to be a 4-year degree. It can be in community college, in our high schools, and other ways that we link people up to the jobs. And all of those are, the things that are important to our company and important to our nation. I think when you put that perspective around it, you know that you are representing your company in policy, supporting policy decisions or bringing insight, but at the same time, you are bringing a perspective to that group that is something that is deeply understood in your own company.
And I think this is what the young leaders, and I'm sure we have a number of them listening in, what they're learning to balance. Listen, but have a perspective and a point of view. That doesn't mean talk a lot, right? So this is what everyone's trying to do, and you've just done it so beautifully throughout your career. What was your biggest challenge during your time as CEO?
Well, I guess starting out was changing the focus of the company, as I mentioned, on more of a customer focus. I think we were a bit in a mode of trying to muscle through the challenges we had with the budget flattening, and I just turned the mindset of our company more on a positive outlook that we're accustomed as a company over many years I've been in the company, the ups and downs of defense budgets, of economic situations, that what we do is so important. It transcends a lot of that. And as long as employees understand that, and they understand that there's a stable, robust growth strategy in a company, and that, even though there's external factors, many companies today are facing this health crisis. Others are facing challenges in their markets for a variety of reasons. And in our case, we were facing one, and I wanted to change the mindset to more positive on how we manage through that. And the best way of doing that is being better aligned with our customer. So that was the first challenge. And then I would say, exciting challenges for me was looking at shaping our portfolio, where we divested an element of our business, about a $5 billion element of business in our IT infrastructure that was really a better owner somewhere else. It wasn't an area that was growing for us. And at the same time, we purchased Sikorsky, which was a great natural fit to our business. And so in the midst of that, where you're carving out a piece of business and finding a good home for those employees in another company, and at the same time bringing in 15,000 new employees and aligning them in the company, that's challenging for a leader of a company, but also very rewarding. I'm very proud to say that, our Sikorsky team is just they were a natural fit for our company, and that element of our business is growing and thriving, and I'm really happy that it's part of it. And as I look at those who were part of that divestiture, that company is growing and thriving as well. So it's always, in the moment, it's challenging. Anytime you're doing an acquisition and divestiture, you're challenged with markets that you're operating in. But that's where you learn the most. As I speak to some of the young leaders that are listening, if I look over my career, where did I learn the most? It was really in those challenging times, whether it was an adversity time, like I mentioned, about having to restructure a business because a major program was lost, or whether it's an acquisition, or whether it's a challenge to deal with growing a company in a market that's not growing. Those are where you learn the most. They're hard in the moment, but you look back on them and you can certainly say that was some of the most learning opportunities in your career.
Absolutely. So as someone who sees opportunity and grows through challenge, we are in a tremendous crisis right now, right? So some companies are thriving, some are, incredibly challenged financially, and everything in between. But I'm curious, given who you are, I have a feeling you're going to have a great answer to this. What do you predict is going to be the best positive outcome on the other side of this crisis? And it could be anything, personal, national, world, corporate.
Well, I'll just give it from my perspective, from our own company. I mean, we, just like everyone else, I mean, this was not something we could have projected. In fact, we announced our CEO transition on March 16th, and by the end of the week, I sent everyone home that could work from home from the company, because we wanted to protect our employees that had to be in the workplace. And I mentioned we have 110,000 employees. We have about 50,000 of them that we were named a critical infrastructure company. As you know, we could not stop working through this process at all. I mean, we're supporting men and women in uniform who they can't just stop working every day. And so we were faced immediately with that change, and then working through all of the parameters that every one of our companies has on how you manage an essential company working, people that are a bit afraid coming into the workplace, and how do you get in place all of the protocols that they feel safe, people who are working at home who are challenged because now the schools are closed, childcare is closed, they're trying to manage a family, or someone who is a single person who doesn't have a family at home and is accustomed to having their social life at work, and all of a sudden they're isolated. So a lot of things that every one of your companies has faced, we also faced in that it wasn't easy just because we were considered essential. We had to keep working. We also had suppliers who were very impacted, small suppliers, concerned about their liquidity. How are they going to manage through this situation, and what could we do to support them? So what did we learn through that? I think a couple of things that I think will be different is it accelerated a lot of trends that were underway. I mean, we as a company were already doing a lot of things in our digital transformation, in the way that we work. We were already working on the future of work, and how we would use more tools and more techniques and remote working. And I think that accelerated that, and it's accelerated our learning on that. We had in place a lot of basic infrastructure to do that, but frankly, we had some challenges on the front end because it wasn't quite where we had planned for it to be, because we just had a more, more regimented way of doing the investments, and we had to step those investments up earlier and get it in place. And then I also think, though, that what it helped us learn is that we can do a lot of work remotely. And so we're now on a phased return to work plan for those who have been working remotely, but we're not going to get everybody back to work really soon. We think there's a lot of jobs that can still be done remotely. We may need to bring people in for team meetings, or all of us are using Zoom and Microsoft Teams and a lot of different tools right now that are available to us. I think another learning we had is that, that time that the connectivity of learning about, parents. I don't have children at home, but I know parents seeing what their children are learning and how that's going to probably make them a better parent. I think, this will make us better leaders, because we had to check in on people that were in the workplace, or we had to be more attuned to those who were coming in the workplace to make sure that, they understood why they have to wear a mask, why they have to check their temperature, why they have to test that they are, that they're feeling well, the social distancing, the enhanced cleaning, all of those things that all of us had to do, I think just made us stronger leaders. What I set out at the outset, and I again say this to those who are leaders, I think the first thing you have to do is set the priorities and make sure those priorities are clear. This is what we can control, and this is what we're going to do. Have compassion for all of the change that our employees are facing in the midst of that, and be flexible to allow them to be able to excel in that new environment they were operating in. And then show them what's on the other side, that we are going to get through this, and we will, all of us will, as we work together. And so my priorities that I outlined at the outset was the health and well-being of our employees is first and foremost. And so we were going to get in place all the things we needed to. We were going to have those work remote as we could, and then maintaining our operations, because what we do is critical to the nation and to our allies. Having those priorities in place was what then set the foundation for everything else that happened. And our teams have I'm so proud of just the phenomenal job they have had in managing through this across our breadth of our corporation. We also understood, as many large companies do, that we had an obligation to give back and to help. So we immediately looked at our philanthropy. I went to our board of directors and asked for more money for their authorization, because they authorize how much we give. And then we actually focused on areas that were impacted on COVID-19 in the communities where we work and live, and as well as at the national level. And then we looked at our balance sheet and said, can we accelerate payments to our suppliers who were hurting? So it was a holistic look, starting first with our employees, making sure that they were safe, making sure we maintain our operations, but looking after our full supply chain in the communities where we work and live. I think that coming together as a nation and we are a nation that we are often faced with challenges, and we get through them, and we're better on the other side of it. I know we will be with this. With our company itself, I know we'll be a stronger company as a result of this. We'll be more reliable, we'll be more robust, resilient as changes come our way. And I think that's true for a lot of companies, many of which have had some very devastating challenges that they're working through right now.
Marilyn, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing all of that. I do want to ask one last question before we wrap. So your career has certainly been all-encompassing. You're by no means retired, but I have a feeling you have a little bit more time now in your schedule now that you've moved into the executive chairman role. I'm curious, what was the first thing that you couldn't wait to have a little bit more newfound time and space to do in your life?
Well, the first was spending more time with my husband, who's my college sweetheart. So you can imagine, if I've been with Lockheed Martin 37 years, and prior to that, we were married many years ago, and he has been my support throughout my career. And so just having more time with him, some of that was forced. I think a lot of families face this, was forced because of COVID-19. It happened a little earlier. I felt like, you know, amid that, my job as CEO, still CEO until just last week, was I had this whole umbrella of COVID-19 and the challenges of that, transitioning, getting a new CEO ready to step into the role, and running through the tape, as I said, for the finish line, to be able to do my best as the CEO until I stepped down. And so, you know, once I had an opportunity to spend some more time with him, I think that, you know, that was the first thing. And then, you know, there's always this list of things that many of us put on the back burner. Unfortunately, it's the demands of the job that change every day for a CEO, that there are things you wish you could do more of. So I got a little more golf in last weekend, which is an area that I want to spend more time on, and just connecting with family and things like that. So I look forward in my next phase. You know, I will certainly be executive chairman. As I said, we've got a board meeting today and tomorrow. I'll, you know, chair the board. I'll continue to support the CEO and in any way that he needs. And we've got a lot of things planned in the near term, certainly, as he's onboarding with site visits and customer visits, et cetera. So I'll still be very busy with all of that. But I do look forward at some point in the future of having that list of things, the books I didn't read, the personal trainer, all those things I want that I'll ultimately get to.
Marilyn, thank you so much for accepting our award, for being with us here today. It was a privilege to hear your insights. We're all inspired by your leadership. Thank you to our audience as well for joining us today, for spending your lunch hour with us. And I look forward to seeing you all soon. Be well.